Well, good morning. On this Friday morning, I was coming outside, going to sit out at our little picnic table out here, and just a couple of drops of rain. And I thought, well, it's almost clear skies above me, and they won't do anything. And while I was sitting there, it started raining hard, and it's still raining hard. And yet, when I look out toward the sky out there, it mostly looks like clear sky out in front of me, so I guess just barely a cloud over a portion of us. Hope you're doing okay, and I'm still enjoying doing these lessons, and hopefully they're a benefit to you and an encouragement to you. This one that I'm going to do tonight is kind of unique. Really just kind of touched my heart, and it's Psalm 71. But before I even read it, I want to ask you a question to you. Why is it so important that we finish what we start for the Lord? Why is it so important that we continue even as we get older? In my life, I've seen some that would rise up quickly and excitedly for the Lord and fizzle out almost as quickly. And, it's always been sad because you want to get excited with them. But as the years have gone by, I would almost get a little bit, not fearful, but concerned when somebody would get just incredibly excited in the beginning, because I thought, if they're serving right now because of pure excitement, then, okay, what happens on those down days when it's not quite so exciting? And, I would say right now, we, as Christians, we're going a little bit through some down days, wondering what's ahead for our nation, for the Christianity in our nation, for our churches, for freedoms, because our world it's really on the verge of great change, it appears. And so, you kind of look at it and say, okay, what's going to keep me going during those times? What's going to keep me going through this time? I've seen some begin and continue for a while, maybe a long while. But at some point they get weary, discouraged, disillusioned, and turn back on serving God. And they just, they stop. I mean, they were with you, and they were going with you. You used to see this at Bible college, man, God be there 3, 4, 5 years. I saw one old boy, he stayed all the way through, got his master's degree, and I don't know, it was like a week before he got his master's degree, he just took off. Never seen or heard from him since. Some I've seen start very late in life, but stay determinedly faithful through their remaining years. I mean, they knew where they came from, and they knew now where they were going, and they just stayed faithful through those remaining years. My desire, though, is found in Psalm 71. Now, it can't be for everybody. All these others are things that some people may be, but Psalm 71 says this in verse 17. It says, "O God, thou hast taught me from my youth, and hitherto have I declared thy wondrous works." So he said, I found out about you in my youth. And he said, and since my youth, I've been telling people about your wondrous works. Now listen what he says, though. Now also, when I'm old and gray-headed, wonder who he's talking about. When I'm old and gray-headed, he says, "O God, forsake me not, until I have showed thy strength unto this generation, and thy power to every one that is to come." I've said for many, many years, one of the things during some really hard times in my life, there was a several year span of time that I fought some illness years and years ago, and most people didn't understand it, and most people didn't really even know to the extent of the illness, and there were times that I just felt like I couldn't go on. But there was something that drove me, and what drove me was, at that time, I would say it was my wife and 6 little girls. For if I quit, I felt like I'd be instilling quit in them. And so I just couldn't quit, because one day they were going to be faced with their own adversity. And one day they were going to be faced with their own trials and their own discouragements and their own pandemics of sorts. And so I just felt like I've got to go on. Now, I wasn't gray-headed then. I was in my what we sort of called our middle years, and so but I wasn't gray-headed then. My beard was not gray then. But it's what it has driven me. It's what I want to do. I started yelling relatively young at 20 years old, and now I'm gray-headed. But I want to run this race to the finish. For only in doing so will the next generation be influenced to run their race in faithfulness to the finish. And every time one of us who began young quits somewhere in our older years, who turns their back on God, who throws in the towel, who just says enough's enough, or even goes into retirement, but it even becomes a spiritual retirement where we just don't have any desire to do anything. I believe it makes a statement to the youth coming behind us. Why fight the battle through these young years or these middle years if we're just going to end up quitting? So I just wanted to tell you tonight, I'm proud and I'm thrilled. We've got about 30 senior saints in our church. And some of the most faithful, devoted people in our church are our senior saints. I mean, they won't quit. They won't give up. They won't turn back. And I apologize for this thing shaking a little bit, but I'm holding it in my lap, and I get a little bit excited, and I start jumping, and it starts shaking. So I apologize for that. But I'm so proud of our senior saints who just keep on coming. They just keep on fighting the battle. They just just the courage, the determination, the desire, the pandemic, and they're the first ones to say, I'm coming to church. And, we've been through stuff before, and we'll get through this too. And what a great influence that you have on the younger people and the middle-aged people. Sadly, it seems that every generation takes a little bit of a step down in that drive and determination and integrity. My dad and mom were the product of the greatest generation. And, and I mean, the character that they had, the determination they had, the work ethic that they had just puts me to shame. I really do. When I think about what they did to rear us boys and living on the farm and Dad hanging drywall all day and then plowing fields and working fields to midnight and then getting back up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go back to work and hang drywall all day and Mama getting up at 4:30 in the morning and driving downtown Memphis to work and doing that for the whole time we're really growing up, but yet coming to every ball game and getting home at 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock from our baseball games during the summer, and she's got to be back up at 4 and 4:30. And sometimes I would see her, I'd just be getting up to go to the bathroom or something and see my mama sitting at the table with a cup of coffee, and she wouldn't even be drinking it. She would just be staring at it because she was, I know, so weary. or she would have to be going back to work early the next morning, but yet we'd jump in the truck as little kids and ride with her down to the field, and she'd flash those lights so Dad could see her, and he'd come on that tractor at midnight, and they would eat a sandwich together and hug each other and kiss each other, and Dad would go back to work in that field, and she'd go back home and put us to bed. And the character, how Dad built our house when I was in the 6th grade, and for one solid year he worked 2 jobs. Went to work at 6:30 in the morning for hanging drywall, and worked it till 3, and then went to another job in a factory at 3:30 and worked it till midnight. Why? To get the money to pay for our house, and then on the weekends build our house. He did everything from the ground up except lay the brick on the outside. And he did that himself, and he such integrity, such character, and I have to admit, I don't have that work ethic. I'd like to think that I got one. I'd like to think that I go hard and long, but I just don't know that I can withstand what they did. They were so character driven, and yet. And then the generation after mine, we're technology driven, and rather than physically driven, and so it's just we keep keeping a step. And so what they have to see is they have to see a generation that just says, look, what really counts is not whether you can live stream your services. It's whether you're still going when there is no live stream. Are you still going to be going like Miss Peggy Cummings and 80, 81, 82 years old and running your bus route and going after your kids. And right now during this virus, we can't run the buses, and she's so brokenhearted over her bus kids and that drive, that determination to go, and been doing it for 40 years. And that's another thing, to just get started doing something and just keep doing it. And just keep fighting the battle and just staying strong. And I just believe, I'm glad that our church gets to see the example of those who have run their race for life and continue to run it faithfully. I'm glad we have people like that where they can see that example and they continue to run it faithfully. They come, every Sunday when some of the elderly come. Let me tell you, we don't come sometimes we don't feel good. We probably, in our illness, in our younger years, feel better than they do on their good days in those older years. When they're pushing their body to get up, pushing their. My daddy, before he passed away, he would wear himself out just trying to get his socks on and his shoes on. Why? To go to church, because he wanted to go to church. He wanted to be there, and he wanted to be an encouragement and uplifting. And people loved his encouragement and his joy and his humor when he got there. But it took a lot of effort just to get there, and. We need to be that example. And that's what I want to do. I started relatively young, but now I'm gray-headed. But I don't want to stop while I'm gray-headed. I don't want to stop while I'm gray-headed. I don't want to stop ever. So many times people nowadays are talking about hey, brother, when are you going to retire? You know what? There is no retirement. I can't. I've got to keep going. I've got to keep going for the Lord. I've got to keep doing what I can do. I've got to keep making a difference because there's a generation coming behind us. And sometimes the young will look at the old and think they've always been old and had nothing else to do but go to church. And I know sometimes young people think, well, sure, they go to church. They're just glad to be able to get out and go somewhere. But no, they've been doing this. This is what they've done for a lifetime, and they fail to realize that many of these blessed saints began in their young life, and have found a race that has meaning and purpose, and they've continued on. And I'm just saying to all of us right now, God never let us get weary in this race for this, if for no other reason. I mean, for God's sake, for God's glory, but for the next generation. For the next generation, for it said, "Oh God, forsake me not." Because now I'm old. Now also when I'm old and gray-headed, God, oh God, forsake me not, until I have showed thy strength unto this generation. Let me show this generation that I can be strong through the strength of the Lord. And let me show the power of God to everyone that is to come. Let them know. Even, with this technology, there'll be a day that I being dead, I hope I'm still speaking. And because that's what the scripture says, he being dead yet speaking. But I believe even then we can prove we kept going. And what a wonderful, blessed thing it would be to have it make a difference in the next generation. And I got a train coming through, so I guess that must be my signal that the time is up. Well, God bless you, and I hope you're doing well, and let's just keep on going. Let's just keep on plugging. Amen? Take care.